Assalamu alaikum. Today is our 11th lecture, and the topic of today's lecture is regional and economic integration. The learning objectives of today's lecture are as follows. First of all, appreciate all the possible different levels of economic integration between nations. The second learning objective is to understand the economic and political arguments for regional economic integration. The third learning objective is to understand the economic and political arguments against the regional economic integration. The second one is for this integration, and the third one is against that integration. What are those arguments? Okay, before we start today's lecture, first we go quickly what we have done in the last lecture. We were discussing about the FDI, and we were discussing in the last lecture about what are the benefits that host countries are getting, benefits and drawbacks, and similarly what are the benefits and drawbacks for the home country. We did see that host country benefits include the resource transfer effects. In resource transfer effects mean actually already talk about this, that remember FDI can benefit a country by bringing in capital, technology, management skills, and helping country to increase its economic growth. Basic concept that we have seen, that what are the advantages that host country where firms are operating, where these firms are going, what are the advantages that multinational companies bring into that country. This is a basic concept we have studied in the last lecture, and the basic benefits include the capital. First of all, this is the investment, and firms there, those multinational companies bring in the capital in that country in terms of money. The second thing is that company brings in the technology. If that company, of course, that company is capable of operating across the borders, that means that company has a better technology. And especially if that company is coming from the developed countries, that's of course and from developed to developing country, that means that company have superior technological skills. The next element is management skills. High efficient management. Efficient management is another process that firms can transfer to the domestic industries. And important thing is all these benefits eventually affects on the economic growth. Like when the company bring in the capital, that's mean balance of payment is increasing. More capital is coming in the money is coming in the country. Technology is increasing. Technology of course these higher technology mean more production, efficient production. All these things will affect on the growth of the economy. And similarly about the management skills, management skill again increases the efficiency of production, efficiency of operations of the companies. These things are ultimately effects on the growth of the economy. The second thing that besides these resources, raw resources, that multinational company brings in the job. Obvious thing is when the company invests something, it will create jobs. And next thing is FDI helps balance of payment in two ways. The first thing is when FDI is substitute for imports. For instance, we have explained the example of automobile industry, when Japanese automobile industry, when they invested in FDI in USA, what happened? What was the benefit? How Japanese FDI affected on balance of payment of USA. Basically before that, USA was importing those automobile parts from Japan. And now what was happening? Instead of that import, now the Japanese firms are doing business through FDI. Now in balance of payment, USA has replaced imports with FDI. This is the first effect. The second effect is when these companies manufacture those parts, like that Japanese company build their cars in USA. Of course, they are exporting those products, those cars to the. For instance, they were exporting to the Canada, to the Mexico, to the Central America or South America, while staying in the USA. These all things ultimately affects the level of export from USA. So these multinational company, the FDI effect on balance of payment in two ways. First, it replaces the import with FDI. The second thing is it increases the level of export by exporting the final products. The next point is FDI affects competition and economic growth. The next point of host country is that it increases the competition within the domestic market. How it increases the competition? And of course, we know that when the foreign multinational companies enter in the market, they give more competition within the domestic market for the domestic firms. When the domestic firms see that, when they face more competition, what they have to do to survive, that they have to think about their quality, their production, their efficiencies. If they are working in the high-tech sector, they will consider more to invest in R&D. They will think more in an innovative way to bring something new to beat those multinational companies, to sustain in the market, to sustain their market share. They have to, because of that competition, they have to innovate things. And because of that innovation and because of this high technology, is R&D, all those things ultimately affect positively on the growth of the economy. Okay, there are three ways. If we see on the other hand, what are the cost for the host country of that FDI? The cost of that of FDI for the host country is first of all adverse effect on competition. Mean there is a probability that because of these multinational companies, they will kill the unstable domestic industry or indigenous industry. They will kill it because those multinational companies have better resources, better technology, better efficiency. Each have been with human capital, with financial capital. They are better equipped in the market, and so the domestic firms, small firms, especially small firms, small and medium-sized firms, SME, these firms cannot compete with those multinational companies, and they will just go out from the business. The second thing is it can affect negatively on the balance of payment. If, for instance, if we continue with the example of Japan and USA, if that Japanese companies operating in USA, if they start importing their products, their spare parts from the Japan, it will increase the level of import in USA, which will give a negative effect on balance of payment of USA. That can be the one adverse effect of FDI. Next thing is loss of national sovereignty and autonomy. FDI can because of FDI, firms can reduce the dependence, the independence from their, because before that they were doing more. Each and everything is there on their hand. For instance, jobs. When the multinational companies enter in the market, they will capture the jobs, they will capture technology, they will capture the whole industry, and ultimately they will keep. There is a possibility that these multinational companies will control the whole industry and eventually the whole economy. This is the really problem for certain countries. The effect on the capital account of the home. Now we talk about the home countries. Home country balance of effect. It can affect negatively on balance of payments. First of all, capital outflow is going on because of companies are investing somewhere else. They are not doing in the home country. Money is going out. It affects negatively on the balance of payment. Job is going out. Of course, employment opportunity is going out from the country. The third is if the import effect that arise from the outward FDI by importing part, the gains from learning valuable skills. But the important thing is what is the benefit for the home country. Home country can get benefits from that FDI through learning skill, reverse effect, which is called reverse resource transfer effect. Like companies are, for instance, if Pakistani company go and operate in USA, of course they will learn the higher technology, their employee will be more, they will learn the more management technique, marketing, strategic techniques, and most different strategies. These strategies and these techniques, when they come back, if they are operating some doing business in Pakistan, if Pakistani firms operating in USA, of course, if they are importing the stuff from Pakistan, spare parts, some parts which are some important component of that product, and they're importing those components from Pakistan, of course that will increase the production in Pakistan, and might be small spare part industry will be production will be increased, people will get job, and in this way the FDI, Pakistani FDI in USA will affect positively on even in Pakistani economy, which will be considered as a home country. Okay, well, there are various ways that home and host countries can encourage and discourage FDI. Host and home countries encourage FDI and discourage FDI through regulations and policies. If we talk about home country provide the subsidies to motivate and encourage firms to go out. They can provide some loan on the better conditions to encourage firms to go out, or they can provide them some tax rebates or something, and to guarantee. And another way that the home country can encourage firms to go out is to provide them some sort of insurance, a foreign investment insurance. If some uncertain thing happens in the foreign market, they will be insured, their property, their capital will be insured. On the other hand, if we see that how home country discourage or restrict firms to go out, these ways can be again the tariffs and barriers or political some sort of some hurdles, red taping systems, bureaucratic hurdles. On the other side, if we see the host country also, nowadays countries are competing with each other to encourage to attract firms so that those firms should invest in those countries. Like it's very famous that most of the countries they offer tax rebates to companies to attract them so that they can invest in those countries or in those states. Okay, decision to export, license or FDI. Now what are the major implication of this whole FDI thing, of this chapter for the managers? The manager have to decide about what mode of investment they have to follow in the foreign country. Either they can choose export, license or FDI. I mean, first of all, if for export, if we talk about export, if the trade barriers are higher or location of that country is far away, then export is not feasible. Similarly, if that products belongs to the high-tech sector, or if the competitive advantage of that company lies in their management skill or strategies or in their uniqueness, that cannot be licensed as well. So in that way, the only choice which is left for those companies is to do the FDI. Okay, now we talk about what is the regional economic integration and how it affects on the trade within the globe. The first of all, regional economic integration is the agreements between countries in a geographic region to reduce the tariff and non-tariff barriers to the free flow of the goods, services and factor of production between each other. Main thing is, what is regional integration, how we can explain this thing. Regional integration are the agreements between the countries which are located within the same region. Why they are making the agreements? Why countries are making such agreements? This is an important question. They are making agreements to reduce the tariff between each other across the border, to reduce the this sort of tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers, to reduce the barrier across the border. And second thing is what sort of products they are expecting from the firms to do the investment across the border. These regional integration expect to have a free flow of products, of services, or of components of the product which can be used within the production of certain big products. I mean, they want to have a free flow of these things across the borders. Now the question is, do regional trade agreements promote free trade? This is the important thing. I mean, they have this intention, and intention is really good, but is it really happening around us? In theory, like we have studied the free market theory, that which encourages countries to remove the tariff and barriers across the border, which will automatically increase the flow of trade flow across the countries. This trade flow will of course will affect, that will give a positive sum game in which both countries, the involving countries who are doing the trade with each other, they will be benefited from that trade. But the world may be moving towards a situation in which a number of regional trade blocs compete against each other. This is the one important thing that they are saying, and we have to focus on this thing, that whether this sort of regional integration is beneficial for the world or not. I mean, because the point is, when the countries are doing the regional integration, they are making the blocks, like Asian bloc, and the European bloc, North American bloc, or some Asian bloc. These are emerging markets bloc. Like these blocks are whenever they do the decisions, with the other countries, they are doing collective decision. For instance, it's not possible after the making EU. It's not possible for individual countries to make their own individual decisions with the countries outside of that bloc. For instance, within the EU, it's not possible only with the Sweden to do the separate trade agreements with the USA. I mean, they have to think about as a whole bloc. They cannot go out of that domain, that framework. While the move toward regional economic integration is generally seen as a good thing, some of the observers worry that it will lead to a world in which regional trade blocs compete with each other. That means that another point that which is highlighted in this statement is, these blocs are trying to compete with each other. Like European bloc is attracting the Chinese investment. North American bloc, NAFTA, that bloc is also trying to attract the Chinese investment. I mean, that means there will be a competition in between the blocks, in between the regions. That's the important thing. Before certain years before the formation of these integration, what we were observing, there was a competition between the countries. Now we will see, after this sort of regional integration, the competition will be between the regions, between the blocks. In this possible future scenario, free trade will exist within each bloc, but each bloc will protect its market from outside competition with the high tariff. That's the important thing. They will, like EU, they will facilitate firms to do the trade within EU, and they will encourage firms to stay within EU need to go out of EU. That's the primal thing for the EU trade policy. The spectator of the EU and the NAFTA turning into economic fortress that shut down foreign producers with high tariff barrier is worrisome to those who believe in unrestricted free trade. If such a situation were to materialize, the resulting decline in trade between the blocs could more than offset the gain from the main important thing is these blocs are behaving like just fortress. Fortress mean like a killer. Like what happened in fortress, that people are safe, they are protected within the fortress, within that boundary, and they are trying to make policies, or they in real scenario what happens that they stop people coming in, especially the outside, the foreigners, the intruders, to enter in that building. This is the basic purpose and how it happens with the fortress. Similarly, like if we continue with the example of EU will encourage firms to operate within the boundaries, within those 27 countries. And they will discourage firms outside, firms belong to the outside of these countries. Firms belong to Asia or America, they will discourage those firms to enter in EU, and in a way that it's against the spirit of free trade theory. The free trade theory asserts that firms have to make a free trade across the border, and in that situation, if they are stopping and if they are increasing the trade barriers for the foreign firms who are not belongs to that bloc, it will decline in trade between blocs and could be more offset. It will increase the cost of trade as compared to benefits of trade across the globe. What are the different levels of regional economic integration? There are several levels there are 5 in fact levels of free trade, regional economic integration. When the companies are getting together, they can be together at 5 different levels. The first one is free trade area, which eliminates all barriers to the trade of goods and services among member countries. Like European Free Trade Association, EFTA, which includes the Norway, Ireland, Liechtenstein and Switzerland. These are the 4 countries comprised of EFTA, free trade area, which is free trade area. And the next one is North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, US, which comprised in between the USA, Canada and Mexico, and Mercosur, between Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay and Uruguay. Okay, free trade area mean eliminate all the barriers to the trade of goods and services among the country. This is the basic intention, and this is the one level of regional integration. The next level is custom union. Custom union also doesn't have the trade barriers like the free trade, like this one, free trade area doesn't have a barrier between the member countries, but the additional thing what this customs union offer is a common external trade policy. They should have a, despite they don't have the trade barriers between each other, between the borders, like they are giving the example of EU. They don't have the trade barriers, but they have the common external trade policy. Common external trade policy mean the policy is same for each country, although for instance in the EU all its trade policy is the same for all 27 countries, and common for other countries, common external trade policy, how they are going to trade and to what extent they are going to do the trade with other countries other than the member countries. Andean community, this is the one another famous example, which comprised of Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador and Peru. Okay, the third level of regional integration is a common market, which has again no barrier to trade between the member countries, like in the free trade area. They have a common external trade policy, like in custom unions. The two things. The third thing is they have a free movement of a factor of production. Factor of production mean they have free movement of factor of production mean human capital, most important human capital. These are considered as immigration. They have a free immigration between each other. And factor of production is also include this parts of production as well. All those things which involves in the production of production. This is called a factor of productions. The good example is Mercosur. Mercosur include Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. Okay, the fourth level of the regional integration is the economic union. Economic union has again like free flow of product and factor of production between members, like we have seen before. Common external trade policy, like in we have seen in the custom union, and but beside these things, a common currency. They have a common currency, a harmonized tax rate, a common monetary and fiscal policy. That's mean in economic union, firms besides the free, no barriers, same trade external policy, but they have same currency, same tax policy, and same monetary and fiscal policy. They have the same thing. And the best example of this economic union is European Union. And because like we know that since 2001, they have January 2001, they have introduced the euro within the within the European bloc. The last point, the last level of regional integration is a political union. Political union involves a central political apparatus that coordinates the economic, social, and foreign policy of member states. Important thing is that on the basis of when they talk about on the basis of political union, they are cooperating with each other. They are that coordinates with each other on the basis of social, economic, and foreign policy. Even not only the economic policy, like we have seen that their currency is same, their tax rate is same, their monetary policy and fiscal policy is harmonized within the member countries. Beside these things, their foreign policy is same as well. That's the more important thing. So foreign mean political, what are their political relationship with other countries, and these relationships should be the same. In a way, we can say that their liking and disliking of other countries should be the same. Their friendship and their friendship should be the same with the other countries. The EU is headed towards at least partial political union, and the US is an example of even closer political union. Okay, this is the graphical representation of these different levels of economic integration. The first one is, like we see, the first one, the green circle, the free trade area, the first level. The next level would be the custom union. The third one is the common market. The fourth one is economic union. The last one is political union. This is the level of integration. If we see, most important thing is when countries start some sort of integration, the first step would be the free trade area. That would be the first step towards regional integration, and gradually they continue towards customs union, common market, economic integration, and the last and final level of integration could be political union. Now the question is why countries integrate their economies, why they want to be together. This is a very important question. All countries gain from free trade and investment, like we have studied this thing in the last chapter, that countries get together and make agreements to increase their trade and flow, so that if they are good on production and they can produce efficiently one product A, and if they are not efficient on production of product B, what they can do, they can trade with they can swap those products which can they produce better with the other countries. In that way, both countries will gain, and that will be the positive sum game. Positive sum gain. Regional economic integration as an attempt to exploit the gains from free trade and investment. Trade theories, like we have said, free trade theory, and it's a positive sum game. Linking countries together make them more dependent on each other. That's another point why they are getting together. They will become more dependent with each other. Dependence creates incentive for political coordination and reduces likelihood of violent conflict and wars. Like we have seen this thing that when the countries get together, what happens that they, because of this economic integration, they will depend on each other, and because of this interdependence on each other, there will be less chances of violent conflict, because they have the interdependence with each other, and there is less chances of war between each other. This is the first benefit of regional integration. Gives countries greater political clout when dealing with other nations. That's another thing. When these firms, like we have seen this thing, like this one, the last point, the political union. Imagine a scenario where countries are regionally integrated at the political union level, the maximum one. What's going to happen? Like we can see nowadays about EU, they have they don't have a there is a less likelihood, there is almost zero likelihood of any war or physical conflict within the EU across the country. The second thing is when they decide about a political decision, when they make a political decision about certain country, like recently they wanted to make a decision about Russia, that the Russia invaded Ukraine. Their decision was unanimous. They collectively, mutually made a decision, and they are treated as a one political power. And if but important thing, there is one trouble there. If not in the case of EU, but to a certain extent, we can say that if the number of countries in that block, in that region, in that agreement is number of countries is more, then the likelihood of getting consensus of those members is really low. It will be really difficult to get same opinion about certain thing. It will be really difficult thing to get the consensus among the member states if the number is high. Okay, what is the points which stop countries to integrate themselves into a one unit? Economic integration is difficult because a nation as a whole may benefit from a regional free trade. Certain groups may lose. Important thing is why firms, sometimes countries wants to stay outside of those regional integration. Why it happens? We can say that the argument for staying isolated is that because of integration, certain countries get benefit of those integration, and certain countries get they don't get any benefit. Some countries get the benefit at the cost of other countries. The typical example is NAFTA, which is a trade agreement between the USA, Canada, and Mexico. The people who argue against the NAFTA is like this, that because of the cheap labor in Mexico, firms in USA and Canada moves their production facilities from USA and Canada to Mexico. And who are the main beneficiary of this regional integration? because of this integration, the barrier was omitted, barrier were reduced, tariff were reduced, and the firms were could easily move their whole production from USA to Mexico. Who was the main beneficiary? According to this school of thought, the main beneficiary is the Mexican people. They got the job, they got the investment, and they got the more job, and but they got the job at the cost of US employees, because the firms operating in USA, they shut down their production unit in USA, and they shifted their production unit from USA to Mexico. And so who was the main beneficiary? Mexico. And who is sort of a loser according to this school of thought? Is the USA. If it implies a loss of national sovereignty, national control, national independence, mainly issue but another people who are against this sort of integration, they also believe this thing that when countries make the integration, they lose the independence. They cannot make their decisions on their own. Rather, they have to follow the decision of the whole bloc, the decision of the whole region. In this perspective, one important thing is they argue that if there are some powerful members within that region, within that bloc, within that agreement, then what's going to happen? The saying of those countries will be more influential, and that's their saying, and their selection, their choice will dominate on the whole region. Like they are saying in the NAFTA, the USA is they make the policies for NAFTA which is more suitable for USA, and they don't care about the Canada and especially for the Mexico. This is the people who are. And the second thing is, when they say that in this sort of situation, Mexico is going to lose their own national independence against this USA. Like then Mexico, it will be is going to make their monetary and fiscal policy on the basis of this regional integration, this contract and agreement of this NAFTA, and which will suit more to the USA. And the next one, economic integration is only beneficial if the amount of trade it creates exceeds the amount it diverts. Now there are two terms. One is a trade creation and one is a trade diversion. Trade creation. Trade creation occurs when low-cost producers within the free trade area replace high-cost domestic producers. For instance, low-cost producers within the free trade area replace high-cost domestic producer. Like with if we continue the example of NAFTA, production in USA is expensive. Production in Mexico is cheaper because of low-cost labor. Trade creation occurs when this high-cost production, which is happening in USA, is replaced with the low-cost production, which is happening in Mexico. Mean, if trade creation will occur if US production will be replaced with the Mexican production. In that way, trade creation will be produced. Okay, the next point is trade diversion. Trade diversion occurs when the higher cost suppliers within the free trade area replaces low cost external supply. For instance, if US is bound to have certain of course, because of NAFTA, they are bound to do the trade, and they are bound to buy certain level of products from the Mexico. Imagine a scenario that US is because of this agreement, they are forced to bring or import stuff from textile stuff from Mexico. But what if that before this agreement, they could buy the textile products from Vietnam at more cheaper rate than Mexico? In that case, we can say that higher cost suppliers, which is Mexico, US is replacing lower cost external supplier, the Vietnam is textile products. They are replacing those low cost suppliers with high cost suppliers, which is in Mexico. In that case, trade diversion occurs. The point is, regional economic integration is only beneficial when trade creation is higher than trade diversion. That's the basic yardstick of doing the economic integration between the countries. Okay, what is the status of regional economic integration in Europe? Europe has two trade blocs. The first one is European Union, which comprised of 27 members. The next one is European Free Trade Area, which comprised of 4 members. The next one is EU is seen as the world's next economic and political superpower because of regional economic integration and political union as well. Now we will see what is the basic, how they have formulated the European Union. The first point is devastation of 2 world wars on Western Europe prompted the formation of the EU. Members wanted to lasting peace and to hold their own on the world's political and economic stage. The first motivating or determining factor of the EU was that Europe has experienced the 2 world wars. And after the World War II, they decided that they are not going to indulge themselves in the 3rd war, and rather what they have to do, they will be integrated with each other, and they are going to keep peace between them, within the Europe. And they want to because of this devastation, and they want to build themselves, and they want to have some economic and political position on the global stage, and that's why they thought of making European Union. And the next point is, forerunner was the European Coal and Steel Community. They started this sort of economic integration with each other, the European countries, with the collaboration of Coal and Steel Community. And they, in 1951, they decided that the Coal and Steel Community, because at that time the coal industry and the steel industry was the largest industries in these countries, and that were the most important products back then. And these industries across those countries, they decided to have some trade agreement with each other. The European Economic Community was formed at the Treaty of Rome with the goal of becoming a common market. In 1957, in Rome, they decided that they want to, they made some economic agreement with each other, and they tried to remove the barriers, remove the tariff for each other, to promote the trade across each other, across the border. And the main goal was to make a common market with each other within the European Union. Okay, the next step was the Single European Act, which was enacted in 1987, which committed the election commission, European Commission countries to work towards establishment of a single market by December 31st, 1992. Was born out of frustration among European Commission countries that the community was not living up to its promises and subsidizing the national firms. The important thing is, when they made, like we have seen this in 1957, they tried to make the economic community, but till 87 they couldn't do any progress, and they were seeing that countries were not interested, and they were not showing any any sort of science, any their effort toward this sort of integration. Like they have provided the example that companies within countries within certain they are promoting their own firms, especially the national firms. Like the France injected the 6 billion francs to Group Bull, which is a state-owned computer maker, and to compete in the international market, which was against the spirit of economic integration and free trade. And because they were France was pushing their state-owned firms to make more trade and to get some capital in the foreign market on the basis of their capital. And in the backdrop of this sort of failure, or this sort of frustration that countries were not doing enough to make successful this sort of integration, they made a treaty, a single European Act. They passed this act that by December 31st in 1992 they have to make some sort of agreement to make a single market. It provided the impetus for this single European Act, provided the impetus for restructuring of substantial section of European industry, allowing for faster economic growth than world otherwise have been the case. In this single European Act in 1987, it provided, it fueled the effort of integration of European Union, and because of this act they got together. And now if we see what are those countries and when they join this European Union, if we see the purple color, these are the original European Union countries who were together in 1993, like Portugal, Spain, France, Ireland, United Kingdom, Netherlands, Germany, Italy, and Denmark. These are the countries who joined in 1993. Later on, 2 countries joined in 1995. These are Sweden and Finland. And later on, 5-6 countries joined in 2004, which include Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary. These are the countries who joined in 2004 of this EU. And 2 countries joined in 2007, which were Romania and Bulgaria. And Croatia joined in 2013. And the candidate countries at the moment who are willing to join the European Union are Iceland and Turkey. They have showed their interest to join the European Union, but the European Union is still observing their economy and their overall decisions what they are making, whether they will join them or not in the future. Okay, what are the basic objectives of making this EU? The first objective was to remove all controls between the European countries, abolishing delays, reduce resource requirement for complying trade bureaucracy. This is the first motive of European integration. The next one is apply mutual product standard should be developed by the European Commission. All these countries should have a same product standards. Before it was happening like it's a very famous example that Japan restricted the import from USA from the USA and the Europe on the basis of this thing, that especially for the automobile industry, on the basis of that their quality, their product standard is not up to their level. But now while making the EU, this is one of their objectives, that product standards should be common, and these product standards should be made by the European Commission. The next one is open public non-national suppliers. These countries should be open to non-national suppliers. Non-national suppliers mean companies from the other countries within the members countries. It will increase the competition, and we have seen the positive impact of competition within the economy. The fourth one is lift barriers to competition in the retail banking, insurance business, and increase borrowing. What they wanted to do that. They wanted to lift the barriers in banking and insurance. But in the real sense, what they wanted that anybody who belongs, any Swedish person who is willing to move to Finland, what they can do, on the basis of their credentials, on the basis of their loan history in Sweden, that person can go to the Finland and show the documents, show the credit history, and get the loan in Finland and start their business. They can do increase it will increase the borrowing. This is the main impact is because of this competition in the retail banking and the single market, single financial market. This borrowing will be easier at both individual, personal, and the corporate level. Remove restriction on foreign exchange transactions. That's some really important thing, that countries should have a single currency, and they don't need to transfer their currency from one currency to another in order to make a deal, or in order to transaction, or in order to travel. And the last one is abolish restriction on cabotage, the right of foreign truckers to pick up and deliver goods by the end of 1992. It will reduce the cost by 10 to 15%. That's a really big thing, that trucks, these lorries, they can go across the Europe without any barrier. They can pick the stuff from Norway, and they can deliver it in Germany without any trouble. Okay, what is the political structure of the European Union? There are four main institutions of European Union. The first one is the European Council, which is the ultimate controlling authority of European Union. The next one is European Commission, which is responsible for proposing EU legislation, implementing it, and monitoring compliance with EU laws by member states. The next one is European Parliament, where they do the debates, legislation proposed by the Commission and forwarded it by the Council. The last one is a Court of Justice, the Supreme Appeals Court for the EU law. They have for EU, they have their own European Council, they have their own European Commission, they have their own Parliament and Justice. These are the four main institutes that they have in the European Union. And nowadays it comprised of 27. Before it was 17 countries. Now they are 27 countries. Britain, Denmark, Sweden opted out at that time. Since establishment in 1999, the euro has had a volatile trading history with the US dollars. Is it good thing or not? This is the important thing. The first one, what were the benefit of euro? The first is the saving from having handled with the one currency. What does it mean? Mean that when a traveler wants to go from Sweden to Germany, they don't need to convert this money from Swedish crown to German franc. They don't need to do that. What they have to do, they can keep the same currency. They can if person is living in France and Germany, they can use the same currency. They can have the euro, the same currency. It will stop. It will save in a year this transaction, because the French guy, when he is intend to travel to to Germany, before what they used to do, they have to change their own currency. They get the German franc. They give the French franc and German currency, and the vice versa. But because of the same currency, what happened that they saved 40 billion US dollars in a year. It is easier to compare prices across Europe if the currency is same. For the people, it's very easier to compare the prices across the countries. So firms are forced to be more competitive. This is another element. For one aspect is for the consumers, that the consumer, it's easy for them to compare the prices. The second is for the companies. They are forced to there will be a more competition, and they are forced to be to stay alive. They have to keep the prices down, or there will be more competitive market which they are facing. Cost of production will be reduced. Again, companies, they don't need to pay the wages same, and taxes same, and cost of labor and the cost of production is same, and that's in that way production. And the special thing is the currency, because of the same currency, they don't need to, they can bring the stuff from the other countries, they can bring the employees from the other countries, and they are going to pay in the same amount, same wages, and the same currency. They don't need to convert the currency. And because of this thing, technology might be in certain countries is higher as compared to another country. They can utilize that technology on the same rate what they are going to pay to their within their home country. Overall cost of production is reduced. Gives a strong boost to the development of high liquid band European capital market like Nasdaq. Because of this euro, they intend to make a liquid market, European capital market, just like they try to develop just like a Nasdaq. Increases the range of investment options open both for the individual and institutions. Again, because of the same currency or because of the same financial integration, this people have more choices rather than only if they are staying in the one country. Before they had just choice to invest their own country, firms in their own country. Now they have the choice because of the same currency or because of the lifting up the restriction of investment. They can invest in any other country, in any other firm. But what is the cost of this euro? On the cost side, we can see that the loss of control over the national monetary policy. Firms, countries, they lost their control on their monetary and fiscal policies. Now the EU is, like we have seen that EU, they have the EU Commission, EU Parliament, EU Council. These institutes, these bodies, they are making the fiscal and monetary policies, and the individual countries, they have the less independence. They have to make the policies in accordance with those European policies, European Commission policy, and in that way they have less independence to alter or shift their policies. EU is not an optimal currency area. Optimal currency area mean in certain areas, the before EU, we can see that the labor wages is different across the countries. Might be in Sweden it's much higher compared to the Greek. In the Greece, labor is different, and the level efficient production efficiency in Sweden might be, they are really famous with the steel industry, might be and they are famous with the arsenal. And on the other hand, if we talk about the Swiss, they are more efficient on the other industries like banking sector. So the making a single currency across these countries, it's not feasible. Should the EU continue to expand? This is the important thing. Like we have in the graphical representation, we have seen that the Iceland and Turkey is still willing to join the EU, and now the question is, should the EU continue to expand or not? Many countries have applied for EU membership. 10 countries joined in 2004, expanding the EU to the 25. In Bulgaria and Romania joined then 27. Turkey has been denied full membership because of concern of human rights, but might be in the future they will join the EU. Now we will do the quick recap of the today's lecture. What was the main important elements we have seen today? It's we discussed the element of economic integration and the formation of economic blocks around the globe. Agreements between the countries in a geographic region to reduce tariff and non-tariff barriers to the free flow of goods, services, and sector production between each other. This is the basic definition. Regional trade blocks compete against each other. That's the important thing. Level of integration, there are 5 levels. Free trade area, which eliminates all the barriers to the to the trade of goods and services. The next one is the custom union, which eliminates the trade barriers, but important thing is they have an external trade policy, combined external trade policy. The next one is a common market, which have a free movement of factors of production. The economic union, the 4th one, which have a same currency, same tax policy, and the fiscal and monetary policy. The 5th one is a political union, where they are politically and political ideology is similar across the bloc. All countries gain from the free trade and investment. This is an important thing. Regional and economic integration aims to exploit the gains from the free trade and investment. Tier 2 says yes, it should happen, and it is a positive sum game. Linking countries together, making them more dependent on each other, creates incentive. This is the linking. This is the positive things. Creates incentive of political cooperation, reduces the likelihood of violent conflict, and gives countries greater political clout when they're dealing with the other countries. If number of countries are increased, then it will be difficult. Forerunner was the European Council. European coal and steel industry. They started to come together across the Europe, and they started to in 1951 to make some sort of a foundation for European Union. Later on in 1957, and then in 1987, the Single European Act was passed, and the main constituents of European Union are the European Commission, European Parliament, Court of Justice. And what is the benefits of staying together? They are saving huge money because of the same currency, rather than especially when they're traveling, they don't need to convert from one currency to another. It's easier to compare the prices for the consumers, and for the company it gives more competition, and competition always good for the economy. Cost of production is reduced, and it gives strong boost to the highly liquid pan-European capital market. And the last thing is it provides a range of investment options open to both the individual and for the institutions. This was the lecture for today. Thank you for today. Allah Hafiz.